Well, are you a saver or a spender? Well, we always laugh about this in our family. We all agree that Chris is good at saving money and I'm good at spending it. Well, somebody has to do the shopping, don't they? But none of us has done very much of that recently, have we? Only essential shops are open now and it's usually Chris that goes in rather than me. But it's made me realise how much life really has changed over this last year. Those things I absolutely took for granted, like nipping in for a loaf of bread, like buying a new pair of shoes, wandering around the supermarket looking for interesting meal ideas, they're not even considered as an option anymore. Things have changed. Do you remember at the beginning of the first lockdown, we went out every Thursday evening at 8 p.m. to clap for carers? Well, because Chris and I are so cut off down here at the rectory, we'd wander up to Floral Farm and join in with the applause there and enjoy that sense of community. We were saying thank you to all those people who in the past we may have taken for granted, those who look after those we love in care homes, those who clean the hospital floors, operate on us, empty our bins or make sure we have fresh food to eat. Suddenly, we understood their importance. We simply couldn't survive without them and we wanted to show our appreciation. Suddenly, we were valuing people who in the past may have been overlooked or taken for granted. I've discovered and learnt to appreciate our neighbourhood in a new way. Well, not just appreciate it, but love it. And it was right on my doorstep all the time. I came across a lovely term in one of Tom Wright's books. He said, God's way of measuring reality is not our way. Well, I think that kind of rings true, doesn't it, for what I've just been describing, the things that I've noticed changing, valuing things that I was taking for granted, enjoying my community that I've been taking for granted. Well, Tom Wright uses this expression to explain what's happening in this story of the widow's coins. God wasn't excited about the huge amount of money that the rich were putting in the money pot. No, he was more interested in the way that the widow gave God something of much less value, but was of much more value to God. She gave of herself. You see, God's way of measuring reality is not our way. He values things differently. He looks at the heart. When Chris and I went off to theological college to train for ministry, we had some brilliant teaching on giving, and I think it was probably on this passage. And I have to admit that we felt really embarrassed and ashamed when we heard it, because before we went to college, we used to give quite a large amount from our earnings, but we didn't feel the pinch at all. We'd worked out what we needed for our family and then gave out of what was left over. We didn't even feel it. We were certainly giving out of our wealth rather than from our poverty. Well, listening to this passage was like a penny dropping, excuse the pun. Suddenly, we saw things differently. We'd got things completely the wrong way round. So we made the decision there and then that even though we were at college living on a small grant, we decided that we were going to give first and then use the rest to live on. And do you know, we never went without. Jesus liked what he saw when he saw the widow give her 2 small coins. He knew that she was giving first. She was giving all she had, even though it was a far smaller amount than the rich were giving away. The worldview would think that the rich person giving lots of money is wonderful, and of course it is. But what God sees is the woman giving all that she has. The value of what she gave was of much greater value to Jesus than what the world might think has most value. You see, it's not about what we give, it's about the heart in which we give it that really matters. And so my question to you and to me is, what do we value the most? Do we see the same reality that God does? Well, over this past year, many of us have learnt to value things that we've taken for granted in the past. The NHS, the carers, the supermarkets, the refuse collectors. We've learnt to notice and appreciate our neighbour that we may have been too busy to notice before. But really, the question I want to end with is how much do we value Jesus? Do we take him for granted? Or do we value Jesus highly enough that we give to him from our heart, from the best of what we have, rather than from what we have left over? Well, now we're going to reflect a bit. We're going to sing together from a song. We're going to sing You Unravel Me. And I invite you to listen to those words. And as we hear them, let them sink in. And let us pray that we might have the eyes to see God's reality in our lives and in the world we live in. And that he would help us to give to him from our hearts, rather than from what we have left over.